Coming back from the international break, Gary Rowett has no fresh injury concerns. The Blues boss was in the stands as England under-20s took on Czech Republic at Shrewsbury Town this week and was pleased with the form of Blues winger Damari Gray.
It was a really interesting one, and I think backs up his decision and our decision to keep him at the club. I know that sounds as though it's completely everyone's choice, but I think the fact that he knows Championship football is good for him. Watching the game, you got players at Man City, you got players at Arsenal, Liverpool, and for me, he looked the player closest to first team football due to the way he played. You know, worked his socks off, he made tackles, he put attacking intensity into the team whenever he picked the ball up. He played like it was a real game, which often when you go to some of these games, you know, it's a little bit possession based, a little bit slower. And I thought he was a standout performer. I mean, I'm going to say that as his manager, but I spoke to one or two other people at the game and they also said the same. So I think that's testament to the fact that he's played a number of championship games, whereas some of those other players probably haven't played one first team game. So, you know, I think that justifies his patience in terms of he wants to play football regularly, you know, and also justifies his ability really, because I think he's a top player.
This week, Blues added defender Shane Lowry to their ranks, a player that Rowett believes can add something different to the squad.
I think there's two things really. I think you know, I think everyone's interpretation of why we brought Shane in might be different to my interpretation of it. I think that's half the problem sometimes. And I think for Shane, you know, we have a gap, we feel, in the squad where we want someone hungry. You know, we could go and take a loan player till January, but I'd always rather have our player that's committed to Birmingham City. He's desperate to do well. He's desperate to come in. He can play left side centre back. He can play left back with a little bit more size. You know, I don't think, like I said before, I don't think it will stop us bringing another defender in at some point. So I think that's important that everyone understands that. I think we've still got room for another defender in the squad, and I think it also frees up space for loans as well, you know, by bringing another permanent player in. So I think whether Shane gets into our team's down to him. You know, I spoke to him about it. I think he's a player that's been at a level he probably shouldn't have been, and I think his motivation now coming to a big club like Birmingham City is he's got another chance, and he's hungry. You know, and again, it'll be down to him, you know, and if he comes in and does what we think he can. You're talking about a player that, you know, 18 months ago played 40 times for Millwall in the Championship and had lots of teams after him. So, you know, there's not that many players we've got in our team at the minute that would be getting some of the bids that they were getting for him. So he is a talented player and just needs to get back up to speed.
Starting this weekend, Blues face 7 games in just 3 weeks, and the manager is fully aware of the test that his squad will face.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive test, and I think that's something I'll be reiterating to the players today, that, you know, if you're not in the starting lineup Saturday, then just make sure you're ready for whatever game you needed in, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of the players will be needed. We've been very fortunate so far. I think we've only used 15 players, and when you look at some teams in the division, I think Derby have used 24 players already, and that's part of that's been down to injuries, of course, but we've had that continuity and consistency that we all know that I like. So, you know, long may that continue, but I think 7 games are going to certainly test that. I think the fact that the Aston Villa game is sandwiched in that as well, which means that more than likely we're going to have to go fairly strong in that game just because of the nature of it. So it's going to be a test, you know, but again, I think if I was a player, I'd rather play in big games and do very little training than train all the time and just play Saturday. So I think, yes, it will test us physically and numbers-wise, but again, that's part of a challenge, and I'm sure we'll learn something new this month.
First up, it's Bristol City at St Andrews, and Rowett is expecting a stern test from the newly promoted Robins.
Well, I think firstly, we have to understand that it's a team that, you know, ran away with League One last year, really. They were the standout team, I think, for the majority of the season. Very, very strong. Play a really strong game. Not saying they're not flexible, but they play free at the back and will bring a different type of challenge to Saturday's game. I'm sure that Steve will be a little bit disappointed with his points tally, but I think they'd be pleased with the performances. I think they've played well in most of the games, and it's going to be a difficult game. We know that. They play with a real attacking spirit. But as we know, it's about us, and you know, we're always respectful of the opposition. We'll always look at their strengths and their potential weaknesses, but we're also aware of ours, and we've got to make sure that we play really, really well. And if we play really well at home again, then I've no doubt that, you know, that's going to be the main focus.